A 63-year-old retired teacher named Margaret had done everything right. She walked 4 miles every morning without fail, rain or shine. She ate her vegetables, avoided fried foods, kept her weight exactly where her doctor wanted it. She took her blood pressure medication at the same time every single day, never missed a dose. Her cholesterol numbers were perfect. Her last checkup 3 months earlier had been textbook normal. Her cardiologist had actually complimented her on how well she was managing her health. Then one Tuesday morning in October, she woke up feeling perfectly fine. No chest pain, no shortness of breath, no warning signs at all. She made herself breakfast the way she had for 40 years, whole grain toast and black coffee, and collapsed in her kitchen while reaching for the coffee pot. Her husband heard the crash from the bedroom and found her unconscious on the floor. When the paramedics arrived 6 minutes later, her heart was struggling with a rhythm so chaotic, so dangerously irregular, they had to shock her twice just to stabilize her for transport. In the emergency room, after we got her heart back into a survivable rhythm, I asked her husband the question I always ask. What had changed in her routine? What was different? He looked at me with complete bewilderment in his eyes. Nothing had changed. Nothing at all. She was doing exactly what her doctor told her to do, exactly the same way she'd been doing it for years. That answer has stayed with me, because what Margaret didn't know, what nobody had taken the time to explain to her, is that 5 completely ordinary habits she practiced every single day were quietly strangling her cardiovascular system. Not risky behaviors, not neglect, just normal habits that millions of people over 60 do without a second thought. And the damage had been building silently for years, while every medical professional she trusted kept telling her she was doing fine. Today I'm going to show you exactly what those habits were, why they become lethally dangerous after 60, even though they were perfectly safe at 50, and what you need to change starting tonight before they destroy your heart the way they nearly destroyed Margaret's. I'm Dr. Michael Chen, and I've been a cardiothoracic surgeon for 28 years. I performed more than 2,000 open heart surgeries. I've held beating hearts in my hands and felt the difference between tissue that's still resilient and tissue that's been damaged by years of silent stress. The patients who end up on my operating table aren't the ones who ignored their health. They're the ones who followed advice that stopped being appropriate the day they turned 60. They're the ones whose doctors never adjusted their guidance to match a fundamentally different body. I've watched the same preventable patterns destroy hearts that should have had decades of good life left. And the hardest part is explaining to families in waiting rooms that the damage didn't come from neglect. It came from doing what they were told without understanding what nobody took the time to explain. Here's what changes after 60 that makes those ordinary habits turn dangerous. Your cardiovascular system loses what I call its margin for error. Think of it like this. When you're 40, your arteries are like brand new garden hoses, flexible, resilient, able to expand and contract with every heartbeat. They absorb pressure fluctuations smoothly. By 60, those same arteries have stiffened dramatically. The elastin fibers that gave them flexibility have degraded. They've lost about 30% of their natural elasticity. That means the same amount of blood pressure that your vessels handled easily at 40 now creates 3 times the mechanical stress at 65. Your heart is pumping the same volume of blood, but now it's pumping against walls that don't give anymore. Walls that can't flex to accommodate pressure surges. And here's the part that catches everyone off guard, the part that changes everything about how you need to live after 60. More than half of adults over 65 have some degree of this arterial stiffening, but almost nobody knows it because it doesn't show up on a standard blood pressure reading taken once in your doctor's office while you're sitting calmly in a chair. The stiffening shows up when your blood pressure spikes during moments of stress, during exercise, after drinking coffee, during digestion, after waking up suddenly from sleep. The damage is happening overnight, between meals, during moments of stress, during all the hours when nobody's measuring anything. Your body is experiencing dangerous pressure surges 20, 30, sometimes 50 times a day, and every single one of them is wearing down your cardiovascular system. That's why habits that seem completely harmless at 50 start destroying your heart at 65 without a single warning sign until something catastrophic finally happens. The first habit is eating dinner late and going to bed within 3 hours of your last meal. I know this sounds harmless. You're probably thinking about your schedule, your social life, the way you've always done things. But here's what's actually happening inside your body when you lie down with food still digesting. Your blood pressure is supposed to dip while you sleep. That overnight dip is critical. It gives your cardiovascular system a chance to recover from the mechanical stress of the day. But when you eat late, your digestive system demands increased blood flow to your gut, which keeps your blood pressure elevated for hours. After 60, when your arteries have already lost their flexibility, that means you're spending 6, 7, sometimes 8 hours every single night with your heart working against stiff vessel walls that should be resting. I've seen patients whose daytime blood pressure was controlled perfectly with medication, but their overnight readings, the ones nobody was checking, were dangerously high every single night for years. The fix here costs nothing. Finish your last meal at least 3.5 hours before bed. If you normally eat at 7 and go to bed at 10, move dinner to 6 or push bedtime to 10:30. That's all. Your cardiovascular system will start recovering that overnight dip within 2 weeks. Write that down. The second habit is taking all your medications first thing in the morning with breakfast, especially if one of those medications is a diuretic. Your doctor probably told you to take everything with food to avoid stomach upset. That's good advice for your stomach. It's terrible advice for your heart after 60. Here's why. Diuretics make you urinate more frequently. That's how they reduce fluid overload and lower blood pressure. But when you take them early in the morning, you're triggering maximum urine output during the hours when your body is most vulnerable to dehydration. By mid-afternoon, especially if you're not drinking enough water, and most seniors aren't, your blood volume drops. When blood volume drops, your heart has to work harder to maintain circulation. Your blood becomes slightly thicker. And for someone over 60 whose arteries are already stiff, that creates a dangerous combination. Thicker blood moving through rigid vessels during the hottest part of the day, when you're most likely to be active. I've had patients come in after what they thought was a mild dizzy spell, and when we checked their hydration levels and blood viscosity in the afternoon, we found they were essentially walking around in a state of controlled dehydration for hours every single day. The question to ask your doctor: write this down exactly. Should I be taking my diuretic at night instead of morning? And if not, what's the specific reason based on my heart function? Most doctors will reconsider the timing once they realize you understand the mechanism. Now, before I show you the third habit, I need to tell you about the one thing that shocked me most when I started analyzing why certain patients develop complications and others didn't. Stay with me, because this is where it gets complicated. It's not the dramatic choices. It's not whether you had that piece of cake at your granddaughter's birthday or skipped the gym one week. The patients whose hearts deteriorated fastest were the ones who repeated small, harmful patterns every single day without realizing those patterns had become dangerous when their body changed. That's what the next 3 habits have in common, and that's why they're destroying more hearts after 60 than any single catastrophic event ever could. The third habit is drinking your morning coffee or tea on an empty stomach. You've probably done this for decades without any problem. But after 60, it becomes a cardiovascular risk you can't afford. Here's the mechanism. Caffeine triggers the release of stress hormones, primarily cortisol and adrenaline. When you consume caffeine on an empty stomach, those hormones spike sharply without the buffering effect of food. For someone over 60, whose blood vessels have lost elasticity, that sharp hormonal spike causes an immediate, significant increase in blood pressure and heart rate. And here's what nobody tells you. That spike doesn't just last 20 minutes. Recent research shows that in older adults, the cardiovascular effects of morning caffeine on an empty stomach can persist for up to 4 hours. 4 hours of elevated pressure against vessels that can't flex to accommodate it anymore. I had a patient, 71-year-old man named Robert, who had a minor stroke at 9:30 in the morning. When we traced back his routine, he drank black coffee at 6 every morning, never ate breakfast, and his blood pressure would spike from normal to dangerously high within 30 minutes and stay elevated until lunch. He'd been doing this for 40 years. It only became lethal after 65. The fix is simple. Eat something, anything, before your first cup. Even a handful of nuts or a piece of toast with peanut butter is enough to slow the absorption and buffer the hormonal response. Give it 3 weeks and check your morning blood pressure readings at home. You'll see the difference. The fourth habit is following the same exercise routine you've done for years without adjusting the intensity or recovery time. I'm not telling you to stop exercising. Exercise is critical, but here's what changes after 60 that makes your old routine dangerous. Your heart's ability to recover between exertion periods slows down significantly. At 40, if you pushed yourself hard during a workout, your heart rate would return to baseline within minutes. At 65, that same recovery can take 2 or 3 times longer. And if you're not allowing adequate recovery, you're essentially asking your heart to perform intense work while it's still physiologically stressed from the previous session. This creates cumulative damage. I've seen runners who maintained the same mileage and pace they ran at 50, and by 68, their heart showed signs of chronic strain, not from the running itself, but from the inadequate recovery between runs. The specific risk is that your heart starts developing small areas of fibrosis, scar tissue, from repeated micro-injuries that never got time to heal. Here's what you need to do. If you exercise intensely, and I mean breathing hard, heart rate elevated, add at least 1 full rest day between sessions. If you currently run 4 days a week, drop to 3 and use the 4th day for gentle walking or stretching. If you lift weights 3 days in a row, split them with rest days. And this is critical. Check your resting heart rate every morning before you get out of bed. If it's more than 5 beats per minute higher than your normal baseline, your body is telling you it hasn't recovered. Skip that day's workout. Your cardiovascular system will be stronger for it. That question has stayed with me. Why do we treat our cars with more respect than our hearts? You wouldn't run your engine at maximum RPM for hours without letting it cool down. Why would you do that to the organ that's kept you alive for 65 years? The fifth habit is the one nobody wants to hear, but it's killing more people over 60 than the other 4 combined. It's continuing to take proton pump inhibitors, those acid reflux medications, for years or even decades without understanding what they're doing to your cardiovascular system. If you're taking omeprazole, esomeprazole, lansoprazole, any medication that ends in prazole, you need to hear this clearly. These medications were designed for short-term use, 8 to 12 weeks maximum. But millions of seniors have been taking them daily for 5, 10, 20 years because they work so well for heartburn that nobody wants to stop. Here's the problem. Proton pump inhibitors interfere with your body's ability to absorb magnesium, and magnesium is absolutely essential for normal heart rhythm. They also reduce nitric oxide production in your blood vessel walls. Nitric oxide is what keeps your vessels relaxed and flexible. After 60, when your vessels are already stiffening naturally, shutting down nitric oxide production is like pouring concrete into those garden hoses we talked about earlier. I've had patients come in with irregular heartbeats, and when we checked their magnesium levels after years of PPI use, they were dangerously low despite eating magnesium-rich foods. The food didn't matter because the medication was blocking absorption. The risk is real. Multiple studies have shown that long-term PPI use in seniors increases the risk of heart attack by up to 30%. So here's what you do, and you do this with your doctor, not on your own. Ask them about stepping down to an H2 blocker like famotidine, or better yet, addressing the root cause of your reflux with meal timing, portion size, and sleep position. If you absolutely have to stay on a PPI, demand that your doctor check your magnesium levels every 6 months and consider supplementing with magnesium glycinate 400 milligrams at night. But the goal should be getting off these medications entirely. Starting tonight, elevate the head of your bed by 6 inches. Stop eating 3.5 hours before sleep and cut your portions in half. 70% of reflux cases in seniors resolve with these changes alone without a single pill. I'm going to tell you something I don't talk about often. When I'm in the operating room, hands inside someone's chest, looking at a heart that's been damaged by years of preventable stress, I'm not thinking about the science. I'm thinking about the family in the waiting room who has no idea this could have been avoided. I'm thinking about all the small moments over all those years when a 5-minute conversation could have changed everything. The damage I see on my operating table doesn't come from exotic diseases or genetic disorders. It comes from ordinary habits that crossed an invisible line the day someone turned 60 and nobody told them the rules had changed. Your doctor isn't hiding this information from you. They're seeing you for 15 minutes twice a year. They don't have time to explain what your body needs at this stage of life. But I do. And what I need you to understand is that everything I just showed you, all 5 of those habits, they seem harmless because they were harmless when you were younger. Your body had margin for error then. It doesn't anymore. That's not a failure. That's just biology. The question is what you do with that information. Margaret, the teacher I told you about at the beginning, survived. After we stabilized her heart, I sat down with her and her husband and went through her entire daily routine. Late dinners, morning coffee on an empty stomach, 20 years of proton pump inhibitors that nobody had ever reconsidered, an exercise routine that hadn't changed since she was 55. When I showed her the specific habits that had damaged her cardiovascular system, she didn't get defensive. She got quiet. Then she asked me the question I hear more than any other. Why didn't anyone tell me this before? And I didn't have a good answer. Because the information exists, the research is clear, but somehow it never makes it from medical journals to the people who need it most. 3 months after her cardiac event, Margaret's overnight blood pressure had dropped 15 points. Her resting heart rate was lower. Her magnesium levels were normal for the first time in years. She didn't need a single new medication. She just needed to know what to stop doing. So here's what I need you to remember. 5 things. First, finish your last meal 3.5 hours before bed to protect your overnight blood pressure dip. Second, ask your doctor about taking your diuretic at night instead of morning to avoid afternoon dehydration. Third, never drink coffee or tea on an empty stomach after 60. The hormonal spike is too dangerous for stiff arteries. Fourth, add rest days between intense exercise sessions and monitor your morning resting heart rate. Fifth, Work with your doctor to get off proton pump inhibitors using meal timing and sleep position changes instead. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these 5 habits have you been doing for years without realizing it might be dangerous? Leave a comment below. Be specific. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to finally make a change. And if this information helped you understand something your doctor never explained, share this video with someone you care about who's over 60. They deserve to know this too. If you want more information like this, information your doctor doesn't have time to explain in a 15-minute appointment, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. I put out a new video every week that breaks down exactly what your body needs at this stage of life. Your heart has been working for you every single minute of every single day since before you were born. It's never stopped. Not once. 65 years of continuous work without a break. Don't you think it's earned the right to have you protected properly? One more thing before you go. Everything I've shared with you today is based on peer-reviewed research and 28 years of cardiovascular surgical experience. But I'm not your doctor. I don't know your specific health conditions, your medications, or your individual risk factors. Before you change anything about your routine, especially your medication timing, talk to your healthcare provider. Show them this video if it helps start the conversation. My goal isn't to replace your doctor. My goal is to give you the information you need to have better conversations with your doctor and to understand what your body actually needs at this stage of your life. Take care of your heart. It's the only one you've got.